I have owned and been using the Panasonic GH5 now for over 2 years, and I use it predominantly for shooting video. It is a fantastically capable camera for shooting video, and I still find myself Googling new features that I've just discovered that it can do. However, if I was to point out its most obvious and most publicised flaw, it would be its autofocus system. It has not been great. In November of this year, Panasonic released Firmware version 2.6 claiming more improvements to its autofocus system, and here is my thoughts on using the Panasonic GH5's autofocus in 2019. Hi, I'm Grant, and the Panasonic GH5 has been my main workhorse for shooting paid professional jobs, and I've used it predominantly for shooting real estate videos and corporate styles of video. The GH5 has had a lot of criticism since its release a few years ago about how rubbish the autofocus system has been when using this camera. Now, that criticism has not been totally unjustified, and like most things, you should take these criticisms with a pinch of salt. Obviously, it also depends on what you intend to shoot with the camera. For example, when I'm shooting paid professional jobs, I always run this camera in full manual mode, including manual focus. However, there are instances, I'm struggling with that word for some reason. However, there are instances when a good autofocus is a great tool or system to have on your camera, and the one that springs to mind is vlog style shooting, where you're predominantly shooting yourself or shooting by yourself. Another good example is this exact situation when I am shooting myself here in my garage, and I don't have anybody to operate my trusty Canon 80D, which I'm shooting this on now, so I've got it on autofocus and I'm relying on it to hold and maintain focus while I'm presenting to camera. I could obviously set a manual focus both on the GH5 and the 80D and use it, but I found that autofocus is a great thing to have for situations like this, because I might hold something up or I might wiggle around, and I completely trust that autofocus there on the Canon 80D to maintain sharp focus on me. So I was keen to download the new firmware for the Panasonic GH5 and give it a spin to see whether there has been some good improvements in the autofocus with this camera. So to give it a whirl, I set the GH5 in full auto everything: auto exposure, autofocus, auto white balance, auto ISO, the whole lot. I predominantly use this Panasonic Leica 12-60 lens, and I walked around our local village here and got some shots in very much a vlog style of shooting, which is what you'd use autofocus for, and here's a quick montage. Overall, I think it does a pretty good job for this vlog style or run and gun style of shooting. However, it occasionally still missed focus, such as these signposts where I thought it would do better. Now, this is one instance where I need the autofocus to be accurate or critical when I do rely on it, and that is when I'm shooting myself for these style of videos, because I can't adjust the focus continually, like I'm going from bright to dark areas. Looks like it's actually working pretty well. In fact, it made a complete liar of me. Righto, take two. Let's try the handheld vlogging test again, which is probably the situation where I would most use autofocus. Now, the first time I tried this, it wasn't so successful, and this time normally I'd probably go on a wider lens like my 8-18, but I'm using my 12-60, so it's a bit more zoomed in, so focus actually is a little bit more critical, because when you've got super wide lenses, the focus can be set pretty much on infinity and get everything, whereas this one is going to be a little bit more critical. So yeah, let's see how this is doing. Now here is a more controlled test with the GH5 where I put my Olympus 25mm f1.8 lens on it and set it up in this very same scenario that we're shooting, or that I am shooting in now. Now this is a great test of the autofocus because I'm using such a shallow depth of field. Focus is critical. Things to look out for is obviously locking onto me and getting focus, and any hunting in the background there. Perhaps you might see it on the fairy lights on the tripod behind me. I have to say the GH5 actually did a really good job in this situation of maintaining and locking on autofocus for me while I was testing it in the same scenario that I'm shooting in now. I would actually be quite comfortable using my GH5 in this exact scenario or shooting in this exact type of situation. Now most of these tests were done on the GH5 and I used the face detect autofocus setting. I also tweaked the AF custom setting in the menu to AF speed -1 and AF sensitivity -1, which is what I'd been using previously. I didn't notice much of a difference when I was testing it, but I've left it at -1 and -1 because that's what I've used predominantly on this camera, or previously on this camera. So to conclude, if I was to give the new upgraded version of the Panasonic autofocus a grade, for example A being excellent and D being a fail, I would probably give it a solid B. To my eye, it seems to lock on and hold the focus pretty well, and it doesn't do that annoying hunting or pulsing that you sometimes see on cameras using autofocus. And it also pulls focus actually quite smoothly in almost in an organic way and not too abrupt. However, where it let me down, as I showed you earlier, was in those vlog style situations when I am shooting myself talking to camera, and unfortunately those are often quite critical situations. You can't afford for those things or the autofocus not to hit. That causes a bit of a dent in my trust on the autofocus on the GH5, even the new improved version. However, it did work quite well in this controlled environment like we're shooting in now. So to me, the autofocus is definitely an improvement on what it has been, and I'm quite comfortable using it in a lot of situations. And kudos to Panasonic, who are continually making improvements to this camera, which is possibly even more than 3 years old now. Autofocus, like most things, is a tool, and with time and experimentation, you'll know when to use it and when to override it. That's it from me. Stay tuned, and I will see you in the next video. So this is the Panasonic. This is the Panasonic GH5. The old Panasonic.